Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. My name is Caroline Colas, and I'm the Senior Director of Health and Wellness at the Marlene Meyerson JCC Manhattan. And today on the Positive Psychology Hour, we have the pleasure of welcoming Dr. Maria Sirois. The Positive Psychology Hour is a series that we do in partnership with the Whole Being Institute. It is curated by Phoebe Atkinson. Our discussion today is around how to unplug, unwind, unwrap masterful self-care in a time when the world needs us most. This may feel like maybe the worst, most selfish moment to focus on self-care. The world needs so much of our attention. There's suffering, conflict, illness, and disintegration everywhere. And here is what is also true. We do little good and sometimes even cause great harm when we fail to find a healthy balance between care for the self and care for others. Today, we're going to discover how a change of mindset to include a wiser activation of care for our bodies, our minds, our spirits, our hearts, and our relationships can also allow us to be more useful to those we love, mentor, and hope to inspire. We're going to learn how to let go of perfectionism, martyrdom, and victimhood that can keep us trapped in unhealthy patterns and examine the beliefs of saying yes and the benefits of saying yes to what we love. We're going to explore how small shifts in attention and in daily practice can pay large rewards in terms of renewed energy, well-being, and love of life. And isn't that where we would all like to be for the transitions that are ahead of us? Today, I wanted to introduce, if some of you haven't met her yet, you're in for an amazing treat. A master in communication and in the dark places of the heart and the light places of the heart, Maria Sirois. She's a master teacher, facilitator, author, and co-founder of Whole Being Institute. She's devoted to the science of well-being and the art of crafting a life and work that embodies health, passion, and success. As a positive psychologist and consultant, she focuses on the resilience of the human spirit, particularly under chronic stress and during significant transitions and or feeling the shock of wholesale change. Known for her wisdom, authenticity, and humor, she brings a wealth of perspective from decades of study in the mind-body medicine and resilience disciplines. For me, she is someone that is capable of bringing hope into the darkest of moments. Maria, thank you so much for joining me today. Let me add you to the spotlight, welcome you to our call, and let you take it away.
Hi, Caroline. I do want to say before we go any further, it is such always an honor and a privilege to be with you and the JCC community. You all have been holding the light, holding the lamp for, how long have we been doing these positive psychology hours now? Over a year, 2 years?
2 years. We're into the third year of the pandemic, which seems inconceivable.
Inconceivable and yet perfect and beautiful. So first, thank you to the community, to Caroline, to the
circle of applause,
Marlene Meyerson community.
Yeah.
Years and years ago, like a long time ago, in my early 20s, I got married right out of college, which was, way up there on foolish moves of my lifetime. Fair enough. We know what we know when we know it. And by the time I was 25, I had been married, now divorced. And just as my cohort was beginning to move in together or think about getting engaged or look for a serious partner, I had already blown through that. And I felt like I was walking around Boston with a scarlet D on my shoulder, that I was completely out of sync with my cohort. I had kind of lost, I never really had a sense of who I was deep inside myself yet, which is why I married so precipitously. And, everything felt unmoored. And it was at that time, at that moment in my life, when I began to realize a learning which has finally come home, like finally become solidified, which is that there needs to be within each of us a centered place, a core, if you will, of clarity about what we most need and we most want. A place of self-reference, a place that is not anyone else's voice about who we should be and how we should be showing up. but a place that is really our place, a home within a home, to quote Rumi, the ruby mine within, that is the who of who we are, steadied, centered, clear, and self-caring, despite the distress around us. When Caroline invited me to come, or Phoebe invited me to come speak today, this was weeks ago. This was, before Russia invaded. And yet there's something is so important and significant about the fact that right now, innocents are in danger. And always in our lifetime, innocents are in danger. And we must do what we can, of course, to stay focused and witness to the injustices around the world and in our own backyards, and show up in the ways that we can to ameliorate suffering wherever we can. I absolutely believe that one of the sort of general essences of being human is to love and to help. The deepest meanings of life, to connect, to love, and to help. Now, in the middle of a time like this, where infection is still present, where there is health danger everywhere, where injustice is present in our backyard, where war is present in places around the world, where it isn't clear how we might help as a single solitary human being, there's a struggle within many of us about where to put our attention. And one of the things I also began to learn way back in the age of 25, when I learned that my own care must be self-referential, it must be internal to me, is that in the worst times, we must actually double down on self-care in order to show up well in those places we long to show up, in order to care healthfully with those people we long to care for and take care of. So it's a funky time to think about masterful self-care, and it is exactly the right moment to think about masterful self-care. And I thought I'd begin with a little self-study. So I'm going to ask a series of questions. I'd love you to just answer, those of you who feel comfortable to do so, yes or no in the chat. Any of you ever tend to feel like you need to get everything right all the time? Yes or no? Hi, everyone. I love seeing your names pop up. A lot of yeses. Oh, yeah, says Rachel. A few no's, right? Fair enough. How about this question? Yes or no? Do you ever feel prone to believing that the world or God or your boss has it in for you? Like that you've been handpicked to suffer a little bit more than others? Anybody? So some yeses and no's, LOL, says Kim. Sometimes. Might that not be the case, said Rachel? Thank you for that, Rachel. Do you tend to believe that you are a good person because you do so much for others? Talking about radical honesty here, people. This is so far, by the way, all of these are a yes for me. All of these are a yes for me. Sure, says Caroline. Yep, I do, says Kim. Hi, Lawrence. Partly yes, Deborah. All right, fair enough, fair enough. How about this one? Do you ever tend to believe that you are a better person than others because of how much you do for others? Yes, exactly, Mary Pat. Yep. Okay. Okay, how about this one? Does anybody believe that others have harder lives than you and so deserve more care? Do I have to say it, Donna? Yes, you do. Okay. Anybody ever believe that self-care is selfish? How about this? If I take time for myself, I am being selfish. Yes or no? Okay, some variety in the answers. How about this one? There's really too much to do to take care of myself as much as I want to. Like I want to, but there's just too much to do. Totally, says Joanne. Hi, Joanne. Camilla. All right. Hi, Camilla. Definitely sometimes. I love that, Nancy. All right, last question. And just as a reminder, I have said yes to all of these. So just want you to know who we're working with here. If I take care of myself, then things might actually fall apart. Like if I don't have my hand on the pulse of everything else, it might actually fall apart. Anybody, yes or no? Okay. So just for yourself, I'd love for you to note how many yeses you responded to, because the yeses put us in a very difficult territory. They put us in the territory where care for self and care for others becomes either or, black and white, right? And the reason they put us in this black or white dichotomy is because they lead us toward mindsets that are non-healthful and non-resilient. Some of those questions sort of illuminated the fact that we can sometimes lean toward perfectionism, have to get it right all the time, have to show up all the time, have to be there for everybody, right? Some of them illuminate a kind of martyrdom, right? Suffering is better. I'm a better person if I'm working hard on behalf of others. If I take on more of the care of the world, I'm somehow better. Like there's a confusion around martyrdom in our at least in our country. Let's just say that in the West. Some of these questions lead us to a kind of victimhood, like God has it in for me, the world has it in for me, my boss has it in for me. I used to absolutely believe that some of the people I'm biologically related to had it in for me. Like I was somehow the lightning rod for the caca, right? And there is, woven through some of those yeses is a kind of what I call superherohood. Like, I can handle it. I can take it all on. I'm supposed to be, the sort of hero in the equation, showing up all the time for everyone. And also connected to these prompts is a kind of misunderstanding sometimes that essentially self-care is a slippery slope to self-centeredness, if not narcissism, that somehow caring for ourselves is inherently dangerous and kind of wrong. Now, I love that you guys were totally honest. There were some clear yeses, some clear nos, but also like, yeah, sometimes, yeah, now and then, or I believe it, but I don't actually act that way. Like being honest with ourselves, perfect, beautiful, absolutely where we need to be. Here's the reality. We don't have unlimited time and energy. We don't have unlimited emotional resources. We don't have unlimited cognitive capacity, right? We do get overwhelmed. We do get flooded. We are at risk at any one moment for things like compassion fatigue and world weariness and existential fear and burnout. And, we're human beings. We are at risk. And so the question we want to hold, this is our driving question for today. How might I care for myself a bit more consistently and a bit more wisely so that I might have the energy and spaciousness within myself to care where I most deem it is important to show up? Now, for some of us, that means care for human beings. For others, it means human beings and the animal species. For others, it means animals and the plant kingdoms. For others, it means the angel. It doesn't matter, right? What matters is how might I care for myself a little more consistently and wisely so that I have the energy, the vitality, the health, the capacity, and the spaciousness to care in the places I deem important. Carla, did you get that? Right? To care in the places that are important to me. Now, I was once working with a woman who was a mom of 3 children, 2 children with normal abilities, 1 child with a whole raft of learning, physical, and developmental disabilities. So this is a child, this third child, who needed full-time care. Father made a decision as a family that the father would work 2 part-time jobs in order to be able to shift so that the mother who had to leave work could be home to care for their third child, for their baby. And what that meant is that mom's life went from here to here, super focused on the home, the child, and his 2 siblings. And father was out in the world doing what he could to provide for the family. Mom participated in a positive psychology class, took all the notes, attended, listened to the recordings, and then asked a profound question. She said, I spend every single day in active, nonstop care, physical care of my son. And in the moments that I don't need to be doing that, in those rare moments, such as when he's resting or when a nurse is there to take care of him, it's all about my other 2 children. I have no time for any of this. And I said, let me ask you a question. What is one thing you are grateful for in this world? And she said, I'm deeply, deeply grateful for my husband, who is a rock. And I said, darling, how long did that take? And she said 3 seconds. I said, what is the difference between the second before you reminded yourself of one thing you're grateful for and the second after? And she said, it's a whole different universe. I said, exactly. There are things that we actually can do to elevate and care for ourselves that actually do not take a tremendous amount of time. What they do take, however, is attention and dedication. There is no transformation. There is no transformation without habit practice, without attending to certain habits of practice that actually elevate us. Now, everyone who's chosen to be on this call and or watch the recording later on has chosen to do so because this theme is important to you. So what I would love to ask you to do, I'm Ava and Carla, I'm going to put that question, that driving question in the chat. But while I'm doing that, what I would love for you to do is everybody own up. One reason why self-care is crucial to you right now. One reason why self-care is crucial to you right now. If you feel comfortable, please put them in the chat. I'm going to type in our driving question. So I deserve it. If people could mute themselves, that would be great. I deserve it. What goes around comes around. Working hard on showing up in the world in a new way, health and family to keep moving forward. Right. A romance that pulls me from supporting sister with IDD and daughter, with IDD daughter. Yep. Anxiety, depression, self-care gets me up and going. I'm not so very happy with myself, so looking for a little more peace and kindness and happiness with myself. Okay. Unusual vulnerability. Thank you for all of this authenticity, because this is where the rubber hits the road, right? We have to be thoughtful for ourselves about why this matters in order to actually dedicate to those small micro changes, just like with the mom I just told you about. 3 seconds of gratitude every day, where we took that information, by the way, myself and that mom, was to sit down and think about how might she practice gratitude, because we know gratitude triggers all sorts of positive neurochemical responses, as well as elevates the heart, as well as creates tiny moments of respite. How might she build into gratitude practice on a regular basis such that she starts to actually receive the benefits of gratitude, such that the day starts to be experienced differently? And what we determined is that she could pair gratitude with a habit she already had in place, which was her morning cup of coffee. Her morning times, her son tended to be kind of quiet, like he could listen to music or he could watch something kind of peacefully. Later afternoons were more agitating. Morning was peaceful. So she could pair it with that. And then after she did not even 7 days, it might have been 5 days or 6 days of gratitude, she emailed me and she said, "Oh my God, I just had another epiphany." I practice gratitude now 5 mornings in a row with my morning cup of coffee, with my son quietly engaged. I then let him know my gratitude. And later today, when I was helping him toilet himself, he named a gratitude. And it hit me. I could also practice this with him once a day, twice a day. The practice itself, less than 1 minute, woven into her care for her son. These micro changes are small, they're infinitesimal in a day. And yet over time, they become the who of who we are. Now, self-care, in addition to often setting us up in a sort of dichotomous way of thinking, care for self, care for others, it also tends to be a thing that when we've practiced in the past hasn't helped as much as we wanted. Here's what I mean by that. If you look at stress reduction, self-care, you guys could mute yourselves, that would be. If you look at the 1980s, 1990s version of self-care, which is still taught in many places in terms of reducing stress, we are told over and over again that it requires some foundational elements, such as good sleep hygiene, healthy nutrition, regular exercise. And then in the 90s, we added in a little bit of meditation or mindfulness. And you know what? Absolutely 1,000% right. Those things make a positive difference. They are foundational to care for the body, care for the mind, care for the heart, and in some ways, care for the spirit. The problem is you can be under great stress, get yourself to bed at a regular time, eat healthfully, exercise regularly, and even do brief, 10 to 30 minutes of meditation a day, and you still don't feel like the stress has been softened enough. The reason is most stress is relational. Most stress is not about me relative to my body or my health or well-being. Some of it is. Quite a bit of stress, however, is about the boss who's driving us crazy, the brother-in-law we can't stand, the child we are worried about, the beloved animal who is not well, the relatives over in Ukraine who are facing horror right now, and the people down the street who have been betrayed and suffered great injustice by the justice system in our country. On and on and on. Most stress is relational. So those foundational practices, which are essential, sleep hygiene, healthy nutrition, exercise, some way to create, quiet space within ourselves, whether it's meditation, mindfulness, breath, yoga, qigong, tai chi, right? Foundational and often insufficient. So I want to bring to you 4 quick sort of ideas about ways that we can elevate our experience of our day, again, to care for ourselves so that as we fill ourselves up, we can show up in the places we deem most important. Side note, I am launching just next week, by the way, a 4-week class on Masterful Self-Care. I'm going to put the link to the class in the chat through our JCC partner and an organization beloved to me called Whole Being Institute. So this is just sort of an introduction. If you want to dive a bit further, please consider joining us in that class. Okay. So a few things that we might do in order to elevate our daily experience of self-care without ignoring others. And the first is to get a little bit better at saying no. This is all about healthy boundaries. The reason the relational stressors are so impactful in a negative way often is because many of us are not facile with healthy boundaries. We tend to either hold too rigid a boundary, and so we don't let relief come in, or we hold too flexible, too fluid, too soft boundaries, and we're constantly giving ourselves away. We're constantly sort of depleting our own energy on behalf of others. So this is for those of us who lean a little bit toward the martyrdom thing and a little bit toward the victimhood thing and the superhero thing. This is where we tend to be vulnerable. So first question, just looking at this, let's say this week or next week. So short time frame, 1 week or 2 weeks. What's one tiny thing that you'd love to give yourself permission to say no to? Just one tiny thing. Any ideas? And if you don't have an idea that comes to mind, because I'm kind of putting you on the spot, just write down the question. What is one thing I can say no to in the next week or two? That pint of ice cream. Yep. Any other thoughts? Dinner with my mom's sister. Just that one thing, that one dinner, take that off. Unnecessary conversations. Hey, Sheila. Thanks, Caroline. Okay. We want to hold this question alive. We want to hold this question alive. Oh yeah, Karen, put the book down. Put it down. We want to hold this question alive because in order to have that spaciousness, to fill our lives in a way that is energizing so that we can show up in the ways we want to show up, we got to get better at letting go of the things that don't serve us. Now, I spent the last year doing a lot of work on the world of boundaries, and I learned a few key things that I'd love to share with you. First of all, setting healthy boundaries, such as saying no around letting go of that book club book, or just not calling your sister, or, not giving yourself permission to pause. Boundaries, we think they're about us and another person. They're actually about us and ourselves. They're actually about setting a boundary around the habits within us that cause us to say yes to the things that actually are not life-giving to us. So they're an inside job. They're an inside job. Number two, it's helpful to have a company line, like a line that you would say to yourself, like, calling my sister or saying yes to that activity is actually going to drain me, and I give myself permission to not be drained. I give myself permission to not be drained. That's my company line internally. Externally, my company line is something like, well, thank you, and I'm going to say no at this time. That's it. So it's helpful to come up with your own language. For me, internally, I give myself permission to not be drained. Externally, thank you, and no, I'm going to say no at this time, period. And then a third boundary, bit of wisdom. My friend Carly Fain says this, and then you want to eat the popcorn, meaning as soon as you've said your boundary line, imagine yourself eating popcorn, because when you're eating popcorn, you have to keep your mouth shut. You can't keep talking yourself out of it or disclaiming. So the problem with saying no to someone else is no, thank you, not at this time. Then they'll say, and then I start feeling bad. And I start, maybe later on, or maybe call me next week, or maybe the next, oh my God. And I've already just given the boundary away, right? You got to eat the popcorn, like say the thing and then put something in your mouth to close your mouth. I love that metaphor. Okay. So guilty and all bad. So here's the thing. You're going to feel your feelings when you set healthy boundaries. You're going to feel your feelings. And I want you to have permission to feel it all, permission to feel the guilt, the anxiety, the fear, the worry, permission to feel it all, and hold the line. Hold the line. Remember, our goal here is a wiser balance of self-care so that we might show up healthfully to the things that we deem important. We're not ignoring the world. We're not shutting the world out. We're choosing wisely how to moderate our existence so that we can be a better human being out in the world. Because if Amy doesn't call her sister at a moment when it's really problematic and chooses to call her sister at a time that really serves her, she's going to be a better person showing up for her sister. If Nancy learns to pause periodically, the next time something comes down the pike that is complex or confusing or complicated, she's going to show up with more energy in her system. So permission to feel everything, write it down, feel the feelings, make a word collage of all the feelings, go for it. Absolutely, feel it all and hold the line. Both are true. All right, a second prompt. Masterful self-care means we need to get better at saying yes. Yes to what we love. Yes to what enlivens us. Yes to what encourages us. Now, I began to say no. December 2020 of the pandemic, I burned out. I became exhausted. I couldn't work. I didn't want to do anything. I didn't want to talk to anybody. And I certainly didn't want to take care of the people, the young adults who showed up back at home. I was done, fried, because I had fallen victim in those first 9 months of the pandemic into old patterns of martyrdom, which I thought I had resolved. And we're back again. One of the small things that I chose to do in terms of saying no was I started saying no to something that public speakers get invited to do often, which are summits, where you participate in, 21 experts talking about such and such. And I get invited to do them all the time, and they require a certain amount of time and energy and attention to market them. And I don't love them. And so I just said, you know what? The time of the summit has passed. I'm going to graciously say, no, thank you. No, thank you. Now, giving myself permission to say no in that one way began to feel so good and freeing. Every time that email came in, inviting me to a summit, I had my company line ready. I said, no, thank you. I felt all my feelings. I held the line. And I noticed that eventually I had more space in my calendar to say yes to the things that I love. So I love that. Dale, thank you for this upgrade. Wait, why am I talking? I love that. Steal that, people. That's brilliant. Wait, why am I talking? I would say waste. Why am I still talking? Right? Why am I still talking? Okay. So say yes. So now looking ahead, what is one thing you'd love to say yes to a little bit more in your life? Let's put those in the chat. One thing you'd love to say yes to a little bit more in your life. Excellent. Art, play, dancing, sleep. Notice the variety, right? What any one of us needs at any one time is specific. It is unique. It is particular. Solitude, nature time, ice cream. Yes. Now notice, Karen, I love that. How one of us needs to say no to ice cream and one of us needs to say yes to ice cream. Welcome to humanity. What serves us at any one time is particular to us. Beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. We say no in order to open up space and time and energy in order to say yes. We say yes. The more we say yes, you all, the more you say yes to what you love, what energizes and lifts and brings joy and delight into your life, the more capacity, the more strength you will have to say no to the things that drain you. They work together. They feed each other. Saying no and saying yes absolutely feed each other. Okay. I have one or two more things to share, but I've been talking a while. I want to pause, open it up for any questions so far. Caroline, just wondering how you're doing, what you're thinking about, and let's see if other people have questions.
Yeah, I'm just thinking that this is radical, right? That this idea of the no and the yes being intertwined, kind of like the infinity symbol, that they feed each other and that they are essential. I don't think I had put that together. And also, I really think it's important what you were emphasizing. I'm just going to add myself for a second about how sleep and nutrition and meditation. And sometimes those, for me, I mean, I'm a health and wellness professional, those can almost be a burden because they take so much time. And how quickly the self-care that you're talking about doesn't have to take that much time. And finally, your emphasis on things have to be habitual in order to make a difference. Those were my, three real takeaways that I felt. I don't know if anybody else, please put in the chat, but those were like, oh, they were like the great ahas for me. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's okay to have it sort of ebb and flow. Like there are times, like right now, given all the stress in the world and in my own life, I'm tripled down on self-care. I'm tripled down because I want to be a better person. I don't want to be impatient, resentful, mean, withholding when I'm asked to show up for the things I signed up to show up for, right? Like I signed up for that. Like, and I, so I'm tripling down, right? Debbie,
Yeah.
I have to remind myself, exactly. We need to give ourselves permission to remember what brings us joy and pleasure. We can forget. We can forget. Okay. Any questions, y'all? I'm not seeing anything in the chat. We're good? We're good so far. Okay. Couple more ideas. This is a little harder one. I'm going to see what Karen, I love the story of the mom. I have a question about gratitude practice. When I've attempted in the past, come up with the same things over and over again, I feel like I'm being lazy. Yeah. Karen, the work of Sonia Lubomirski, who's at UCal Riverside, is seminal in the field of gratitude. And one of the points that she makes is that most of us have to figure out novel ways of practicing gratitude. Otherwise, we do get caught in a loop of appreciating the whole thing, the same things over and over again, right? So, well, yeah. Yeah, the book, thank you, Nancy, is called The How of Happiness. So you want to shake up gratitude. You want to do it in different ways. I like to practice a practice called Best Moment of the Day, where I close my eyes at night and 21 nights in a row, I remember for myself what was the best moment of that day and savor it. That's another practice. Another practice I love is gratitude texting. Like I'll just randomly in the middle of a day say, oh, who can I gratitude text? And I do that for 30 days in a row. Because the good news about that one is the world tends to respond back. Maybe not all 30 people are going to write back to you. Maybe you're just gratitude texting the same 4 people, but they're going to come back to you positively. Yeah. People do gratitude jars and gratitude sort of around the dinner table. Like what's one thing we can be grateful for before we start eating. I also encourage you. This one I love. This is a weird one, but for those of us who struggle with like my life is advantaged. My life is privileged. And here I am whining that I'm grateful for only the same 5 things. And, I began to bring gratitude to the inanimate objects in my life. Like I have 2 pairs of readers. I'm so grateful that I have a pair and a backup because I really can't read without them anymore. I'm so thankful for my readers. I'm so thankful for the fact that I have a phone, that I can connect to people 24 hours a day. Like start thinking about what you actually have in your life from a place of gratitude, the tiny things. I have hair ties that help me keep my hair out of my face when I'm exercising. Like it actually centers you more in the place that Thich Nhat Hanh really wanted us all to live in, which is this incredible present moment awareness of the goodness in our life. So that while we're washing dishes, we're actually experiencing the water and the dish and the food that was prepared that made the dish dirty. Amy has hair. Yes, how about gratitude for the fact that some of us have hair or had hair with color? Just like invite yourself into that practice, Karen, and see where it takes you. Debbie, I'm so overwhelmed by my to-do list. What does your list look like? My list looks ridiculous. I get hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of emails every day. I have hundreds of students, if not thousands, around the world who write to me, who share things. I'm supposed to be marketing my work. And then I've got, 2 children of my own, 3 children with my partner, 5 children who there's always somebody in crisis there. I have an elderly, the list goes on and on. The list goes on and on. We don't have enough time to do everything. That isn't the question. The question is, do we have enough energy to do the thing that is important to us today? So I really want to encourage you to let go of the time thinking and come into energy. Do I have enough energy to do the few things I really need to do and want to do today? Self-care brings energy, which makes time more affluent. I hope that's helpful for you. Coffee, Bobby, you got it. Okay, here's a slightly sort of a little more intense question. What one small change might I do this week, next week, say in the next 2 weeks, to demonstrate respect to myself? Respect to myself. What one small change might I do in the next coming weeks to demonstrate respect for myself? What does self-respect look and feel like today, or this week, or next week? Yeah. There is no transformation, positive transformation, without some degree of self-respect, some degree of treating oneself as if one matters, as if one needs have a kind of dignity to them. I was listening to a podcast from Brene Brown the other day, and she gets so much feedback from the world. And often the feedback she gets is about the same topic. So for example, her weight, and she gets a slew of feedback from people saying, here's how you might want to lose some weight. But she also gets a slew of feedback from people saying, thank you for not talking much about your weight, for being body positive, for not, not proposing to, the feedback is everywhere and it's intense. And it took her until the middle of her life, until midlife, to realize that she has to reference herself every day. Meaning, she knows that what works for her is to weigh her food. She knows that what works for her is a certain amount of exercise each week. That formula may not work for others. Okay. Self-care is self-referential. It starts here. It's an inside job. And choosing to actually pay attention to what works for her is her way of treating herself with respect. Esperanza, absolutely savoring those little steps. Tremendous self-respect there. Here's the progress I've made. I'm going to savor that. Here's the progress I've made. I'm going to savor that. Beautiful. Yeah. Okay, one last idea, and then we're going to open it up for general conversation. I love this quote from Audre Lorde. Caring for myself is not self-indulgence, it is self-preservation. And sometimes that is an act of political warfare, self-preservation, right? Love that. Okay. What is one small, brave act you might take in the next few weeks? One small, brave act. Now, the way you treat yourself with respect might actually require courage. So it might be the same answer. The way I am treating myself with respect now is I am giving myself permission to do an hour-long meditation in the morning. Remember, I just said I'm tripling down on self-care. I get up early, I'm doing an hour. Don't be bothering me. the door is closed for that hour, right? That's how I'm treating myself with respect. The brave act, I have a list of 3 brave conversations I want to have in the next 2 weeks that enable me to create more space in my calendar. My goal is to do one of those in the next 2 weeks. I've got a list of 3. I'm just going to hold myself accountable for one. Now, again, you might not have an answer popping up right away. That's no problem. I just want you to have the questions. Questions are doorways. This is a doorway into a little bit better, healthier, wiser self-care. So we've talked about no, which is boundaries. Yes, choosing life, treating ourselves with respect as if we matter, and then courage, brave act. And the reason I bring in the notion of courage is if you look at the work of Nathaniel Branden, who really is the father of self-esteem, Harvard professor, wrote The 6 Pillars of Self-Esteem. His work is seminal. If you break down the sort of 6 themes of his research, 5 of them clearly point to needing courage. 5 of them are courageous. They're absolutely courageous. And for some of us, saying, you know what, I'm not going to call my best friend who feels more like a friend to me right now. I'm not going to call her today. That might feel extremely brave. So honor that in yourself. No one gets to decide what feels courageous for anybody else. We know what feels courageous for ourselves. Courage is always self-referential. It is sometimes also socially referential. But in this work, this inner work of self-care, it's always from inside here. I know what's brave for me. May not seem brave for you. It may be easy for you. Fair enough. Your life. Some things that are courageous for me are extremely hard for me to do. It might be easy for you. It's okay. This is about me choosing wisely, filling myself with energy and spaciousness so that I show up for the things that I deem important. Yesterday, this is Rumi. Yesterday, I was clever, so I wanted to change the world. Today, I am wise. I am changing myself. Okay. Caroline, how's it? Where are you at? How's this landing? And I'd love to hear any questions from anyone.
I think it's amazing. Again, this idea of, I put down that one thing that I'm going to do for self-respect is that I'm actually going to put in my calendar what I'm willing to do versus what I wish or think I should do, because I find that I have I put in my calendar everything like my to-do list, and then I feel disappointed, going back to your perfectionists, right? That they don't get done. And because it's like a list. And instead of just putting in there, what am I really willing to do? And it seems to me like that is like, what's my truth? What do I really want to spend my time on today? What are the things that are important to me? So it ties into what you're saying, which is spending time and energy on what's important to me, and that visual of the calendar. I love that. I wonder if anybody else is saying anything that they're wanting to do. And my question was about hope. We know that hope in positive psychology is the only positive emotion where fear is present, right? And that hope involves agency. And it seems to me like when I feel afraid, this is a time also to activate hope as a way of self-care too. I wondered if you would comment a little bit on that.
So we know from the work of Dan Tomasulo, who you've had on, who's just a wonderful, wonderful human being and scientist, researcher, psychologist, that people high in hope set micro goals. So they take action. In other words, hope feels like a feeling, but it is actually known through action, through the action we take. So the connection I want to make here is that as you practice these micro steps of self-care, you will feel more hopeful. You'll feel more hopeful that you can get through what you're facing, You'll feel more hopeful that you can actually contribute in ways that are meaningful for you. And you might actually feel more hopeful about the world in general. It's worth an experiment to see what happens to your hope index if you were to practice any of these, let's say for 21 or 30 days. So there's a direct connection there. Here's the thing. All of the big problems, and I mean like injustice, betrayal,
Poverty.
Me Too, war, poverty, famine, all of them require as many of us as possible to show up, right? But we can't take on all of them. I can't take on poverty, foster children, koalas, the trees, carbon. Yeah, I can't take it. But there are things that I have a lot of energy for, and that's where I can show up. I want to show up in the channels that are important to me, where I can do my best work, right? So put 1,000 koalas in front of me, I'm probably not going to do much for you, right? But you give me 100 parents whose children are dying, and I got all the time in the world, right? I want to have the time in the world for that, because that's my path. That's my vocation. And I want to have the energy to show up well. You could see like how impassioned I am. The only way to show up well to mothers who have children who are dying for me is to care for myself. It's paradoxical and it's true.
Yeah, beautiful. So I wondered if you wanted to just check in with the chat. Can you repeat the 3 bullet points in your words, says Janie. Do you know what she's referring to? Janie, do you want to come off mute and tell us?
Yeah, Janie, what? And hi, Janie.
Hi. I just wanted to know, like how we use our self-care to elevate our day, like the daily, and how it will just elevate our day. You had mentioned you say no, and then you say yes. But how do I word, like if I want to keep these 3? I love the idea that we're again talking about how we have 2 hands and we can hold both, which has been so consistent in our training in positive psychology. I think that is so important, and to understand that, to create that spaciousness, which is really brilliant. And but then how do you conceptualize, like what is the word that you use for the 3rd thing that elevates our day?
I'm not sure what you're referring to about the 3rd thing, but let me just give you the whole model. What I've given you are 4 prompts that are part of the model that I call Masterful Self-Care.
Mm-hmm.
There are 6 elements to that model. The first is what we traditionally think of as self-care, which I think of as nourishment,
Mm-hmm.
like healthy sleep, healthy food, exercise, etc. So the first element is self-care. The second element is self-esteem, which is watching ourselves be brave. That's where the courage element comes in. That's the Nathaniel Branden work. The third element is self-compassion, which we didn't talk about today, which has to do with kindness to ourselves and forgiving ourselves for not being perfect. The fourth element is positive self-regard, which is treating ourselves with respect. The fifth element is saying no, healthy boundaries, which we did talk about today. And the last one is saying yes, choosing life, choosing what you love. So we've got traditional self-care, which is about nourishment. We have self-esteem, which is about courage. We have positive self-regard, which which is about respect, self-compassion, forgiveness, kindness to oneself, saying no, and saying yes. Now, in each of these 6 categories, and I teach it as a wheel, you begin to see as you explore how they serve each other. Like the more forgiving I am of myself, the more I give myself permission to say yes. The more I treat myself with respect, the more likely I am to be able to be brave and experience myself growing. And that creates energy and vitality. The better I am at nourishing myself, like getting myself to sleep on time, the more likely I am to actually say yes and show up. Like not just say yes to myself, but actually show up and do the thing I know I'm going to love. They feed each other. So I think of them as a wheel. And those 4 questions I gave you today are, prompts to help illuminate and amplify your capacity in 4 of those categories. Now, the truth of the matter is, at this time in life, like today, what is today, March 1st, some of you may need, like forgiveness may be the number 1 driver of positive change. For some of you, saying no might be the number 1 driver of positive change. For me at this time, treating my needs with respect as if they actually matter is the number 1 driver for me. So I've got like respect stickers all over my bathroom mirror right now. Like, what does respect for myself look like today? Because the pressure feels so intense right now. I have got to create moments of respite, recovery, and self-care so I can keep showing up. So I'll put that the class that starts next week, I'll put that in the chat one more time if anybody has questions about that.
Maria, I was just curious why you were considering that course now. Like, why is that in course to you so important? It seems so vital, but I'm just wondering, I know for me, when I teach certain things, it's like I almost get an intuitive hit. This is what I need right now. This is what I feel is needed right now. Was it that way for you, or was it planned and it just happened to coincide with this chaotic time?
No. Yes, it was planned. I have 2 answers to that. And so when these 2 things happen at the same time, I know that I trust my intuition. So the 2 things that happen at the same time is that I, who have an extraordinary support system, a tremendous amount of resources around me and within me, a tremendous amount of knowledge about health, resilience, self-care, well-being, positivity, etc., I fell apart during the pandemic. So that was personal. Now, professionally, at the same time that was happening, December 2020 into 2021, remember we all thought January 2021 was going to be better, and it wasn't. Mm-hmm. As that was happening, I was getting emails from around the world from people like me with tremendous resources and people with less resources, all saying the exact same thing, which is, I don't know how I'm going to get through another month of this, or another 3 months, or another school semester, or another. And so when the world is reflecting back my personal experience, and when my personal experience is reflecting back the world, that's when that concussion happens, it's a clue for me that to ask, what do we need? What do I need? And it just felt like, you know what, this pandemic thing, we're going to be dealing with this for this transitions and the great resignation and burnout and all that. We're going to be dealing with this for a while, not to mention infections and losses and masks and not masks and who's safe and who's not. That. And then war. So it just felt like we've got to do more of this in order that we can keep showing up for our world.
Yeah. So everyone, if you are feeling as Maria has felt, this might be a wonderful workshop to attend, to be in community, to answer some of those questions. I know for me, when I'm with others, which is one of the reasons we have this Positive Psychology Hour, and we're in our 3rd year, is when I'm with you, I feel like I can go forward, right? And so it is a time to lean in to one another. It is a time to lean in and receive support. And if that interests you, Maria put it in the chat. I can't believe it. We're at the top of the hour. This has just been so wonderful to spend time with you. It's reminding me to put self-care first. I actually had it in my daily design today. So it was Kismet. And I love that you're doing this course. I thank you for doing this course. I think it's really well needed. And I hope everyone considers it if you have the time to do that and you feel drawn to doing that. We will be back on Thursday. And I have some exciting news. I get to meet Megan and Hiko in person for the first time tonight, everybody. So, and we're working on, just a little hint, we're working on creating a experience, an in-person and virtual experience at the JCC in the fall. So stay tuned. We'll tell you more about that. Have an amazing, remarkable day today, everyone, and we'll see you on Thursday. Bye now.